Alright, everyone. I found her. I found Cassee. She ran away from me and decided to never return, but I forced her back into the conversation.
Really?
I forced you back into it.
You're such a bad conversationalist. You had to force me.
Yeah. I'm really that bad at everything. Boo hoo hoo hoo.
Oh God. Really?
Hey.
No, I think it's actually because you were such a good conversationalist. I think that's how we met, if I remember correctly.
I met you at the time when I was meeting a lot of new people. So I don't quite remember how I met you, but
If I recall correctly, you posted something random in the support room at work about waiting for Game of Thrones to be released last season.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep. That is, I do believe, how we actually started talking, and then it just kind of spiraled onto this craziness that you see here before you today, ladies and gentlemen.
It is kind of terrifying, actually. Like, even if I remember correctly, you and I didn't talk for like half a year, and then I had my baby, and you were all like baby mommy care package, and I was like, okay, I need to talk to this girl a little bit more.
Actually, no, I was the one that I believe anyway, if I remember correctly, I was like contacting you at least once a week to ask how you were doing.
You were the only one while I was on maternity leave that actually asked me how I was doing. Even my manager at the time didn't even
What?
She didn't even call me or message me. In fact, the only time that we talked or during that time, she forgot about the conversation and moved my team over to someone else.
What?
Yeah.
How can you forget about... Never mind. I'm not even gonna ask, because if I ask, it's gonna sound really rude.
Oh, I've already had that rant conversation. I can't say anything about it now because, honestly, that person I work really well with now. So, at the time I was a little bit upset, but now I accidents happen.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's easy to let little things sometimes slip through, but I guess I feel like, oh my gosh, even if we were, like, best friends at the time, I still kind of was worried about you. I mean, even if I just met you, I felt like I at least owed it to you to ask, how you were doing, at the very least.
I appreciated it. I did, because at that point in time, I was going insane. Like, 6 weeks off of work and having to deal with a newborn and my 3-year-old and my husband and my little boy going to school. Like, this is just when James started going to school, and it was the bad time of going to school. So I was just like, I was going crazy. It was nice to have someone to talk to.
Yeah, well, I figured at the very least, even if, like, you weren't, like, gonna turn around and be, like, a best friends with me or anything, for whatever reason, I figured I could at least show that I wasn't gonna just, like, forget about you because you were on maternity leave.
That was nice. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I prefer not to forget about people just because I, have a baby.
Right. Well, I told you the other day about how the only, like, I've never had a friend who didn't either stop talking to me for a long period of time or, like, hated me because I moved or something like that. Like, one of my best friends in high school for over a year, I would take her to work, and I would, there was a time when I went to GameStop, and her boyfriend, fiance at the time, decided it was a good idea to trade in a bunch of games for money for dinner. And they got they didn't tell me how much they got, but they came up to me and said, they're not going to give us enough money to buy dinner, so can you loan us the money and then I'll pay you back later? And I was like, yeah, that's fine, no big deal. And like they come out of GameStop with 5 different new video games, like the $60 video game. And I kind of look at them and I'm like, so what games did you get? And they name it off, and I say, oh, well, those cost kind of a lot. And they say, yeah, but luckily enough, the trade-ins gave us enough money. Should we go to dinner now? And they had me pay for dinner, and I was one of those people at the time that, like, very timid. I didn't want to confront anyone at all. So, like, I bought them dinner, and I was just sitting there flabbergasted that they had the guts to buy 5 new video games and then still ask me to pay for dinner. And then when at one point in time, they borrowed my Nintendo DS, and I was going to move down to live with Peyton. And at that point in time, I was like, okay, I need to have my DS back because I'm moving. I'm not going to be living here anymore. And the girl she cussed me out, saying how I was never a good friend for her, and how I always mistreated her, and how I was the worst friend because I never helped her or did anything for her. She cussed me out. I was like, I'm done. I was so done over that.
Wow. I'm just, wow. I'm not going to say I've never asked for like help or favors, but I'm also really good about, I feel like it's a two-way street, just because, you help me once, I don't feel like I should have to rely on that, and I also don't feel like...
There's a difference between asking for help and taking advantage.
Right.
In her situation, she didn't need help. She wanted to take advantage of me being nice, and so she decided to ask me for help before they told me how much money they were getting for the games or anything like that. And then when I moved, she decided I wasn't a good friend for her anymore.
Right, and I could not even begin to imagine saying or doing anything like that. I really couldn't. I guess part of me is just, I don't want to say I'm too nice, but I'm kind of timid about asking for things. Like, it really takes something major. Like, if, there was something really big, like we weren't going to be able to, like, pay our heating bill or something, and we were all going to freeze, then I might, ask somebody for help, but it would take a pretty desperate circumstance. I wouldn't just do it just because. Okay. I'm just like, wow, I could not imagine doing that to somebody.
And I'm one of those people that, I've been through so much that asking for help for me is like a new form of torture. Literally, I hate asking for people for help nowadays. And anytime that I have asked someone for help, I've felt bad doing it, or it turned against me in a very bad way. So I never ask people for help, but I will always go out of my way to help other people. And when they turn against me like that, it hits a special part in me, like the kind, nice person that I can't do it anymore. And
yeah.
I noticed that some of my agents at work are taking advantage of that too, because I'm a nice person. I really am. But then I have people at work that are just like, oh, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And I'm like, it's against the rules, so why are you asking me?
Right. And I feel like you are an incredibly caring person, but even you have to have limits, and also they have to have enough responsibility for their own actions to understand, when they're going too far. Oh. I'm like, you can't. There's a time and a place to ask for help or ask for a favor, but when it's something that the other person can't or shouldn't do, I feel like it's wrong of you to even think about asking.
Right.
I wouldn't ask a friend to help me rob a bank because I know it's wrong and I could get them in trouble, and I don't want to hurt someone else's reputation because I'm feeling like being a ding dong. I am just like, no.
Yeah. On a lighter subject, have you seen the movie Frozen yet?
Yes, I have.
Who
hasn't seen that movie?
My husband is very gracefully avoiding it.
Very gracefully avoiding it. I don't even know what to make of that.
Not so much.
I don't even know what to make of that. I really don't. But, okay.
He's seen it, but he's avoiding it like the plague. He's like, I really don't want to watch this movie.
Gotcha. Yes, I have seen it. I liked it because it wasn't all about the lover in that situation. It was, in the end, it was the sisters and their bond that, quote unquote, saved the day. So I felt like that, for a Disney movie, was an awesome touch. I'm sorry. Disney has done the whole princess gets saved by the prince, or even prince and princess meet and fall in love, and that's the point to the story. So many times in the past. I mean, even going way back, I mean, they're talking like the Snow White, Cinderellas, but also, you know, a lot of the, even some of the newer stuff. You know, it's about, okay, guy meets girl and they become in love and it's just awesome. And it's like, as much as I am for, you know, find true love, I feel like that has gotten so old and cliche.
See, I disagree in general, because there's a lot of even, like, non-movies out there where, you know, it's a Disney show, but it's not what we see as Disney. And that's what I'm seeing. Like, one of the conversations I had with Peyton the other day was on, have you heard of the show Jake and the Neverland Pirates?
No.
It's a toddler show. It's a little kid show. And pretty much what it is there's Jake, who is the main character, and then there's his two friends, which are a little boy and a little girl. And the whole point is they're in Neverland with Peter Pan and Captain Hook, and Captain Hook always tries to, you know, cause trouble, and they solve puzzles and things like that. Well, Peyton had a problem with this show because it teaches kids that pirates are nice and can get along with other people, like sharing is caring and all that good stuff. Whereas in reality, pirates aren't really that way, so we shouldn't be teaching kids that. And I'm like, you know, for a little kid show, I don't care. It's a kid show. You're not teaching kids, like, it's like, one of his points was, if kids will want to be like, I want to be a pirate when I grow up, and then they'll be disappointed when they realize that pirates aren't really that way. Well, then we also have to think, well, princesses and all kinds of different things are not that way, so why are we teaching kids that they can be that?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm back and forth, because Disney, don't get me wrong, Disney has really gone downhill since I knew it as a kid. But I also think that we don't give them enough credit for the change that they've gone through over the years and how they are trying to rehearse for the newer audiences.
I did appreciate, I'll be honest, and of course my sexual orientation probably has a lot to do with this. I did appreciate the fact that there was a, even if it wasn't like a lesbian couple featured, that it was there. It was present. It wasn't hidden or disguised or in any way, shape, or form like pulled off. It was just it was just supposed to be a natural, here this is. I like the fact they didn't skate around it, they just kind of went at it, which, I'll be honest, the topic is so touchy. I'm sure that they had their fair share of angry people over that. But at the same time, I'm also looking at it from a standpoint of it's coming down the pike. I mean, eventually I'm hoping it will be just a normal thing. Until then, you know, such as it is, I can accept the fact that not every movie is going to feature a lesbian, gay, transgender, however you want to phrase it, whatever item of the LGBT community. But at the same time, I felt like it did make some progress with that. And I'll be honest, though, Disney, I felt for a really long time there, I felt like Disney was just sequel after sequel after sequel. Yeah. I felt like they weren't doing anything original anymore. And it's like, I grew up on things like The Little Mermaid, right. Snow White, Cinderella. Each of them were their own story. They did do sequels, for most of those. But the sequels were not, they weren't necessarily giant theater releases, targeting just the money. That was just mostly, for the kids. It wasn't necessarily like this giant theater release sequel. It was more of a, here's something else they can buy in the store. Here's something else for the kids who liked that show or that movie. And so I liked that. The fact that Frozen is a completely original spin on a story that hasn't been done.
Here's my issue with that thought mentality, though, is that it was the same mentality for, I hate to say it this way, but blacks. And now a lot of people think that every time a movie or a show comes out that it needs a rendition with a different colored person or a different sexual orientation person.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. Like Annie.
No.
I'm not saying that it was bad that they made a version of Annie with a multicolor, but it's one of those things that it's getting to that point where people are thinking that everything has to have a rendition for a different person. No.
And that I disagree with. The fact that in Frozen it wasn't the centerpiece. In fact, if I recall correctly, the entire frame was like a 2-second wave. I mean, that was it. It didn't have to be front and center. It wasn't up in your face, like shoving the that lifestyle towards people as if it was, this is the book of what you have to be. That's one of the things I appreciated about it. They didn't make one of the characters lesbian or gay. They didn't make one of the center focal characters lesbian or gay. It was there. That's one of the things I liked about it. I think that would be more appropriate, is not necessarily having a specific race, color, gender, sexual orientation. I don't think you need a separate movie for each of that. Why can't they just be together like normal society? Why can't they just have a mixing, a comic, just a conglomeration of people of all different backgrounds, all different races, all different societies? And I understand they focused in Russia. I get it. They were really going for that culture in that movie. Just like in, for instance, Tangled, mostly centered on that deep southern, very southern home style, that homey feeling of just good southern life on the bay, and it was just it felt southern, so that was their focus, and that's fine. But I feel like at the same time they don't need to make a movie just to present another ethnicity, race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. Right. They just need to make it acceptable that, okay, just because the focal point is X doesn't mean that a Y character can't appear. Does that make any sense?
Help me out. Was there a lesbian couple in Frozen that I missed?
No, there wasn't. That's what I was trying to point out, is they didn't make any of they didn't make a lesbian couple a focal point. They just made it in there. Just like in
was there one at all? Like, I didn't.
No.
Okay.
There wasn't. There has never been a lesbian. There was the gay couple, but there was not a lesbian. To get technically correct on you, that was how that show went. But it was a 2-second frame of them waving, so really was not that in your face. It was something, unless you like rewound and actually played and like really focused on it, you almost wouldn't even catch it.
Right.
But the truth of it is, I feel like as a society, we need to be accepting of other people, regardless of any of the many features that make us diverse. Same thing in movies. I feel like we should all be able to have, we don't need to all be a centerpiece in a Disney film to feel like we're accepted in society. I feel like we do need to be accepting of other people, though. It's not as though you can't have a couple that's a lesbian featured in a Disney movie, but we don't have to be. You don't have to have one certain profile in every Disney movie. I feel like they just need to accept that, rather than keeping their background characters all of the exact same styles or whatever, make it more natural to have sideline characters of different groups, especially if they do something a little bit more modern and American. But they did the same thing in a lot of their more modern Disney shows. There was a lesbian couple featured on Good Luck Charlie. That caused a huge stir. I do believe it was in like the last season that was even brought into it, but it caused a massive stir because people weren't expecting it. But it wasn't like it was the main character. It was just part of the show. And all of the seasons that they ran, there was like a very small number of episodes where you even saw or heard about them.
My thing is, people are people. It doesn't matter if you're black. It doesn't matter if you're white. It doesn't matter. So why are we going out of our way to making renditions of movies that have already been out to just highlight that type of person?
I think, honestly, it's almost having the opposite effect of what people think it should have. Rather than celebrating the differences, we were highlighting the differences by saying, oh, well, we're going to highlight this color in this movie, this sexual orientation in this movie, this ethnicity in this movie, this background in this movie. I feel like, okay, rather than every stereotype has to have a movie, or even every group, as I keep saying, every color or sexual orientation, gender, ethnicity, not every single one of those needs their own feature film. They just need to be meshed. I'm not saying that you can't have one of everything, but I don't see why it's such a big deal if they decide to feature, 3 Latin princesses in a row. That's not a big deal. No one should be getting up in arms about it, just like no one should be getting up in arms about, 4... I don't know. I'm really drawing off the top of my head to give examples, but you get what I'm saying? I feel like they're almost causing the opposite effect. Rather than just being prideful of being who you are, you're just basically waiting for your turn in the spotlight.
Right. It's
rather than accepting.
It's making people more diverse than they already were.
Yeah, we're way more aware of the differences, rather than just saying, oh, we're all people. No, well, you're a person in this movie, you actually matter in this movie, well, your people were displayed in that movie. It's like, no. don't you don't have to make it one particular group. Although I did appreciate the fact that they highlighted a region that they hadn't previously highlighted in their movies. If you've actually followed some of like their locations, you've got Africa for The Lion King, especially. You've got underwater, which in an ocean for The Little Mermaid. You've got mostly France for The Aristocats and Ratatouille. You've got America for things like not Tangled. The other one, Princess and the Frog, and also Bolt. You basically have all these different regions being highlighted. I've never seen one just straight Russia.
Right. Well, there was one of my favorite ones. What was it?
If you're about to say Anastasia, it was not Disney.
Well,
just saying.
What was that?
Anastasia was DreamWorks, I want to say. Give me a second. I'm pulling.
You're fine.
But yeah, no, I know it did feature in there, but because it's not Disney, I didn't really lump it.
But even there was one, Brave was in Scotland.
That I loved. Brave is one of my all-time favorites. Right. And it's not necessarily as a everyone thinks it's, especially for me, for whatever reason, all my friends think it's because there was a kick-butt female character. No, the truth of the matter is I loved how the mother-daughter relationship played out. Not because I have a bad relationship with my mother. I honestly think I have a fairly decent relationship with my mom. But, first of all, they didn't kill off the parents.
Right.
Which, I'm sorry, Disney is infamous for killing off parents, either one or both. But instead of just making it about the girl needs to teach her mother a lesson. The girl had a lot to learn too.
Right.
She needed to understand where her mother was coming from. And I liked the fact that there was a middle ground met, rather than one of them is completely right or wrong.
Right.
And that was, to me, amazing. Plus, I'll be honest, I liked how they added that cute little whimsical Will-o'-the-Wisp. I thought that was an immensely encouraging little touch.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're bringing in a cultural element to the story to really make it feel authentic.
That wasn't Disney either. That was Pixar.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because the only reason I know that is because James watches a lot of Toy Story. And they do a lot of inner movie type stuff.
Yeah, you're right. It's Brave is Disney as far as the over company, but the problem with Disney and Pixar is they're both there, but they're two separate. They're separate, but they're both the same, if that makes any sense whatsoever. It's like an egg, but there's the yolk and the white.
Yeah.
I know, it's really confusing. Although, I will say, there are a lot of other animation companies out there. Unfortunately, Disney and Pixar and DreamWorks are probably, like, the only ones I ever really hear about.
Right.
And DreamWorks, really, honestly, DreamWorks I don't hear about too often. Their most famous stuff, I think, was Shrek.
Oh, yeah.
I think Shrek was, like, their big thing.
Cassie, I died.
You died?
I died. I made it so far. I made it to the last level and died.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah.
You're bringing the Disney princesses.
Alright, well, I guess that means we're going to end the episode here. We will be back again tomorrow. We do apologize for the technical difficulties yesterday, but we got everything taken care of, and Cassee is going to lovingly call her internet company and complain.
Lovingly.
Lovingly.
Lovingly. Lovingly might be stretched definition-wise, just a little.
So, once again, everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.